Welcome. I'm Mary Bowie, co-chair of the Insurance Families Network and senior legal counsel for Miller, and a member of the Insurance Institute of London's Inclusion Diversity Committee. Today's IFN podcast is a discussion with our guest speaker from the Insurance Charities, Joy Thornicroft, who has kindly agreed to talk to us about how the Insurance Charities' history, connection with the insurance market can help transform insurance people's lives for the better by providing a real lifeline to support them with whatever difficulties they and their families may be experiencing. Now, we at the IFN know from our members' engagement experience that economic hardship and challenges can affect anyone at any stage, level or seniority in their career and working life. And we have featured the Insurance Charities on our website as a resource for a little while now. And however, what I notice is that very often this very important charity is overlooked as a hidden source of much needed support for those working in insurance who really are in need. And today, Joy and I will discuss the charity's objectives, find out a bit more about its history and background, and links with the insurance market. So, Joy, in a nutshell, what does the Insurance Charities as an organisation do, and what do they provide?
Well, hello everyone, and many thanks, Mary, for giving us this opportunity just to say a little bit about what we do, and really to encourage all those listening to see whether we are a resource they might want to take advantage of, or there might be somebody they know who also might be in need of our help. So we are the only UK charity helping past and present insurance people and their dependents. We provide financial and practical help, as well as signposting. So depending what the person needs, we do see ourselves as almost like a one-stop shop. If we can't do it, then we can certainly refer the person to somebody else. So financial help might be needed, for example, on a one-off basis or an ongoing basis. Equally, it may be that it's long-term or short-term. All those circumstances are taken into account by us, and we can provide help, whatever it is, and for however long it might be. Normally, that financial help is on an outright basis, so it's given, it doesn't need to be repaid to us. There may be some circumstances where a charitable interest-free loan might be considered. In those circumstances, we do, of course, take into account the fact that there may be hardship, so we're not expecting people to make any repayments at a time when they can't afford them. If there is a repayment that's needed, it may well be, for example, when a property is sold or when the money becomes available from the person's estate. So we do take into account all the way through our journey with somebody that their circumstances may be difficult, and we definitely would do all that we can to make sure our help is appropriate and for the right period of time.
Now, before we go on to discuss sort of the eligibility criteria in a bit more detail, I know from our sort of previous discussions that the Insurance Charities has quite a long and varied history, and I'm sure anyone who's listening out there will be thinking, well, where does the money come from? So let's talk a bit more about your background.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, goodness me, we've been in existence for over 100 years. Obviously, life was very different at that point. Established in 1902 as the Insurance Clerks' Orphanage. There never was an orphanage, but I think it was probably intended that it might be needed. Anybody who's a scholar of history will know that if you lost your main breadwinner at those times, any family members were at serious risk of losing everything, their home. They would have no resources of their own. So I can see that there might have been a need for an orphanage where insurance families would have needed to go, because otherwise they could be subject to landlords who, well, let's not even think what the landlords might have done. But yeah, so established as that charity, it was quite a restrictive group of people that could benefit at that point. And actually, you needed to have paid in as an insurance working person. And sometimes the sums were quite sizable. So alongside that, 30 years later, the Insurance Benevolent Fund was created, a much wider brief as to the people that could be helped. And those two charities ran alongside each other for a long, long time. Certainly when I joined, both charities were in operation. But they were brought together in 2004 under the heading of the Insurance Charities. Two charities, obviously, come together, but also other charities have come in different companies who perhaps have merged with others, and their beneficiary class therefore made it difficult for their hardship funds to identify people they could help. And various other industry bodies who had charitable funds have come under our umbrella as well. So that's our history. How are we funded? Well, various people have been very generous over the past years, so we do have a large capital base, which is why we don't actively fundraise at the moment. Some people do carry out events for us because those not only raise funds, but they also raise awareness, and that does help people come to us. So we have investment from our investment income, as well as corporate donations and donations from individuals. But we are a well-funded charity, and I think what we really want to say is the funds are there within the industry to support people, so we really want them to come to us.
That's really interesting to reflect on, actually, Anne-Lee Joy, and particularly one thing that you said about the insurance clerks orphanage. It actually, you know, whilst there was a need for it, it wasn't actually used. However, the remit, if you like, of the benevolent fund became operable a little bit later, so that actually more people could access the funding. And just linking into that, really, could you sort of talk me through some of the benefits available for members of the insurance industry to access your resources, particularly in times of that kind of critical need or hardship, or just generally approach you if they are facing challenges, and whether you have any eligibility criteria? I mean, as we've sort of talked about prior to this podcast, you know, we are the Insurance Families Network. However, we know that families come in, or the concept of a family comes in many different forms, whether that's with, you know, a traditional kind of nuclear family with children and a heterosexual relationship, or a same-sex partnership, or anything, any kind of variation of what people might describe as being a family. And equally, the insurance charities is there to support any sort of profile subject to your eligibility criteria for an application in times of hardship. So do you want to just talk me through that, and for the benefit of anybody who's listening with us today?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you don't mind, I'd quite like to talk about the eligibility criteria first, because I think that will show how inclusive we are, and how therefore once you start to talk about examples, it may be that people think, oh, I don't fit that, or I don't fit that. But basically, anybody who has worked in the insurance industry or is working in the insurance industry, so that might be employed by an insurance employer, somebody who'd recognize themselves as an insurer or a broker, but equally it may be somebody who is carrying out insurance work at the local government. So if they see themselves as their activity is insurance, it doesn't matter where they do it, they would be eligible. Similarly, if you work for an insurance company, an insurance employer, it doesn't matter what type of work you do for them. So we could have, for example, people who would see themselves as more on the admin side. They don't know anything at all about insurance, but they work for an insurance employer. They would be as eligible to apply to us as somebody who is a broker or an underwriter, or has gained qualifications in the insurance industry. So it's either the nature of your business, which is insurance, or the fact you have an insurance employer. So we're looking at those people who would be eligible to apply to the insurance charities. Normally we would say 5 years minimum working life, but we recognise that for some people, they come into the industry and sadly, misfortune happens almost immediately. So they have had no work outside what we call the insurance industry. And those people would be eligible to come to us. I think that's why we're a little reluctant to put a number of years on it, so that people don't think, oh my goodness, I've only done 4 years, therefore I'm not eligible. So really, we're looking for people who are in the insurance industry or were in the insurance industry in those two ways that I mentioned before, and now find that for some reason either their insurance career can't continue, or it has got a little comma after it whilst they need to take a break or something like that. So a reasonable period of time in the insurance industry, let's say that, when all their working life is taken into account. Then financial hardship. So we recognise that there will be times when people have to use their resources to finance things that actually they would prefer not to. So we'd all like to be able to use what we view as our spare cash for, let's call them nice things or things that we feel are desirable. Sometimes there will be times when actually we have to use it for things that we wouldn't have chosen originally to pay. If you can afford to do that quite easily, then it would be difficult to ask us to help you, because we have to show to, for example, the Charity Commission that the people we've been helping actually needed our help. So I guess what we're really saying is that there needs to be financial hardship, but that can be different for everyone. So we wouldn't like to say, if you have income above this particular level, then we can't help you, because actually we know that people who may have ordinarily quite a high level of income might also have high level of commitments. So when it comes to additional costs they have to finance, it could be hardship for them. So I think what we'd say is, if you're going to struggle to pay whatever it is that you need, we'd rather you came to us, because you might be surprised and we might be able to help you even though you thought that we couldn't. So we've got the insurance service, we've got the hardship, and then the last element is an element of misfortune. If something were to happen in life that was either unforeseen or unexpected, or actually just unhoped for, we can understand that most people's finances could be thrown off track. For example, if an illness occurs, which means somebody needs to stop work or reduce their hours, that could obviously be themselves or a member of their family. Or if something comes along, for example, somebody perhaps goes on maternity leave and plans to return, but then something happens on maternity leave, which means they can't return in the way they expected, then we would see that as an element of misfortune which has arisen. So their plans have been thrown from what they thought they could do. So the three things really are those eligibility criteria: insurance service, hardship, and misfortune. And we would far rather that people came to us to say, can you let me know if I qualify, rather than determine for themselves, I don't think I qualify. You know, it's much better that we have that conversation. Yeah. We see ourselves as a lifeline. So, for example, we may find that an insurance employer can support to a certain level, but perhaps needs to withdraw after a period of time, or can't provide support to an adequate level. We might need to top that up. It might be that there is help available from the state, but not enough. So someone might need adaptations to a property, but not covering the full amount. So again, we can top it up. So the lifeline can be either topping up or a complete lifeline because there's nobody else there. So many things that you know, because we help in so many different circumstances, sometimes it can be a little hard to put it all together in a neat package.
So why don't you talk to me a little bit more about that then, Annalie Joy? So we've talked about the eligibility criteria, but I think our listeners will probably be helpful for them to actually hear some examples or case studies, because I know that it's such a wide remit that you have. Examples of some awards or case studies of people that you've helped would be really useful, I think. Could you talk us through some of those?
Yes, absolutely. And I think probably what I'd want to say is that I know that often people are understandably concerned about confidentiality. What I would also say is that when people have come to us, many of them have said, I didn't ever know that you existed. So I'm very happy that you tell how you've helped me, because it might encourage other people to come forward. So very rarely would we publicize anybody's names or details which would identify them, but most people are very happy that their circumstances are shared with others. So, you know, sort of first of all, as a reassurance for anybody who might want to come forward, but also just showing how actually it turns itself on its head, that people do want others to know, because they don't want them to go through what they did of a long time worrying about a particular problem when it could have perhaps been helped a little bit earlier in the process. So yeah, I mean, every case is distressing, and we recognise that we are very much on the fringes with what we do. We can't take away the concern or the heartache of some things, but we can often help financially, which takes away that element of how am I going to fund this, or you know, how am I going to get through financially. Many cases we look at are for quite small things. People might think, well, why can't they afford that? But sometimes circumstances come together and it means you just can't afford the replacement washing machine. You just can't afford the laptop for somebody starting out at school, or indeed somebody going to university. All the things that actually make life work much more easily can be an added problem for some individuals and households. So regularly we would fund domestic appliances, regularly we would fund school uniform, regularly we would fund equipment like laptops to help people connect in the way that they need to, whether it's their kids or for themselves. Some of the cases we have, sorry.
Sorry, Emily, Joy, go ahead.
So again, other cases are not so common, and one can often be grateful for that. One particularly harrowing case was of a lady who worked in insurance, went on maternity leave, and just before her baby was born, she was told that the baby had died. Her partner walked away for reasons which may have been understandable for the partner, but the lady was left needing to give birth to a dead child with no partner to support her, and also no finances to fund the funeral. I think in those circumstances, we were very grateful that people around her thought about us, and they came to us and we were able to fund the funeral for her. Again, we could not in any way take away the distress of that time in her life, added to by being on her own going through it, but we were able to do something to show the support of the industry for her at that point in time.
And I think it's such a sad story, Annalie, Joy, but it's really important, I think, to remind ourselves that also in conjunction with the care with which you've reviewed and treated that very challenging situation, you do also deliver support via some specific partnerships that can provide, very specific help and advice for your applicants.
Yeah, I mean, some cases are sad in themselves, but we can provide some joy in them. And one particular case I often think of is a small family unit where their child had mobility issues and was confined to a wheelchair, and for many years was confined to a standard wheelchair. If you think about a child in a wheelchair, that already creates a barrier between that child and his or her peers, because they're not at the same level. They're not doing the same things. And the family approached us and said that they had seen a wheelchair that actually went up and down, so it would enable the child to reach up high and also reach down low. And at the time it was like £15,000, and not many families would have that kind of money just freely available. And so they started to fundraise themselves, but the parents were so exhausted in trying to get the resources together, they were actually losing time with their very precious child. And somebody referred them to us, and that's where we're so grateful that people do think about us. And we were able to fund the rest of what was needed. And the parents told a very moving scenario of the child who could get under the table to pick up things that he dropped, things that our kids do naturally. He'd never ever been able to do that before. And also at school, to get down on the school mat and listen to the teacher telling the stories and things again. We can't take away the stress and distress of some of the challenges of having children with mobility issues, but we were able to help that child become more integrated in the normal circumstances of family and school.
Thank you, Annalie, Joy. And I think, in the spirit of inclusion diversity, there's some real examples there of how the insurance charities has facilitated, access and equality. And I think that's amazing. And just circling back to a couple of the partnerships that you have, as I said, with the sort of specific, who can provide specific areas of support, who you signpost to. Did you want to just mention those briefly?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're talking about, different types of family makeup. Many of us face that challenge of sometimes having younger family members to look after and older family members who are going through health challenges, etc. One of the partnerships we have is with the Alzheimer's Society. Again, I won't go through the background of dementia and Alzheimer's, we're all familiar with it, but we've developed a partnership which is incredibly exciting, that with a parent or a family member affected by dementia, we can refer those people straight through to a fast track advisor at the Alzheimer's Society, who will contact the family and be like a family friend, telling them what's on in the area, telling them about general support available, listening to particular concerns in the family unit. We have one particular person who said, I cannot speak more highly about the support that was available at a time that was really needed by me and my family. We didn't really know where to go to. There was loads of information out there, but to have somebody allocated to us, able to talk things through with us at that particular point in time, was really important. And on the other side of the partnership are opportunities for people to volunteer. So to be not those dedicated advisors, but to be a befriender, somebody who rings somebody for a short period of time on a regular basis. It could be actually the person with dementia, or it could be a family member or partner who actually just needs a little bit of a break to talk to somebody and chat through things. So those are two ways in which our partnership with the Alzheimer's Society is helping family units and households insurance people. And then shelter. I mean, for those of you who've never contacted shelter, you might be under the misapprehension that they only deal with homeless people. But that is far from the truth. They give really important advice to those of us who live in owned properties, or those of us who live in rented accommodation. So any housing issues, again, we have a partnership, so we can put you straight through to a dedicated person who will listen to what the concern is, give you current and appropriate legal and other advice about your circumstances, and help you through with any of those concerns you have.
That's really great. And also, I think you've mentioned before as well, Anne-Lee Joy, that you have sponsored a domestic abuse toolkit for employers in partnership with the Employers Initiative Against Domestic Abuse. Do you want to just briefly touch on that for us?
Yes, I mean, this is something really that is for employers. So whatever size you may be as an employer, it's obviously important that we all recognise our responsibility to our employees when they are in the work situation. And of course, now that work situation includes many people working from home, and for those people who are experiencing domestic abuse, that can of course be their place of abuse. So it helps, it gives really helpful tips to employers as to how to identify those who may be experiencing domestic abuse, and also those who are the perpetrators, and also then to talk through how employees can be supported and perpetrators how they can be supported too, because really if we can get rid of the problem, then we get rid of the victims as well. So that's really more of an employer's initiative, but it's something which just highlights our dedication to help those who are the victims of domestic abuse. And so we have that for the employers, and then we have financial help, which we can give to those who perhaps need to leave a situation of domestic abuse. Then we can help them set up and get themselves back on their feet financially.
Well, thank you very much for talking us through that. Some very, very important work and initiatives taking place there. And probably something that's quite current or relevant at the moment is this concept, particularly so through COVID we've had kind of income shock where a partner might be furloughed, or families or household units were impacted in that way with regard to resources. And now we obviously have the cost of living crisis that we're reading a lot about in the press. So I think it's perhaps we could talk about that, and perhaps maybe for anyone who's hesitant or reluctant to make an approach because they're worried that their particular situation may not be perceived as warranting support and assistance, and that could perhaps act against them. maybe there are just some residual misconceptions and concerns that you could just recap on. And I think for me particularly, it's that anybody at any stage in their career or level of seniority could apply for support, and you'll be in a better position just to briefly talk us through that, Joy.
Yeah, obviously I'll be as brief as I can here. I think the first thing we would say is please contact us. No matter how much we put on our website or circulate by way of information, we cannot possibly cover all those circumstances where we can help. So I guess what we would want to say is just because we've said this is where we can help doesn't mean we can't help in other circumstances. So it's really important that people get in touch at an early stage when they're thinking, I'm seriously starting to get worried about this. How am I going to pay X, Y, or Z if this happens as it looks like it might happen?
Yeah, and just to break down a bit of more of that stigma, Anne Joy, I mean, you know, it's fair to say that you've had senior executives approach you and be offered support, as well as, you know, people who have a less senior position in an organisation. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, that's a very fair comment. I think as society changes, then our own circumstances change. And so it's not uncommon now for people who are perhaps longer in their career still to have quite high financial commitments. What might have been perceived as the normal pattern of life many moons ago of starting off in your career, you build your career so things start to get a bit easier, then your commitments start to drop off, so you're then on a trajectory where things are you know, getting easier for you. Now with all the twists and turns in life, it could be that somebody who is has been in the industry and working for quite a long time and therefore potentially on quite a reasonable salary might still have very high commitments. They might have new commitments, they might have a new family or a new partner, or they might have gone through a divorce. So instead of, you know, supporting one household, there are two households to support. So I think a whole load of different things might come into play, which would mean that anybody at any time in their career might be in need of our help. And we don't have an income limit. We do, of course, have a savings level at which we're saying, well, okay, if you're looking for help with day-to-day living expenses, you're probably okay at the moment. You might need us in the future. So again, please don't forget about us. And if you've got very high expenditure, even if you've got a reasonable level of savings, they might not be enough to finance a really expensive piece of equipment or something. So yeah, first of all, please come to us. Whoever you are, it's as we've mentioned before, it's confidential. We need details, but mainly you can probably provide them to us. So it's not that you need to go anywhere else to get them. Working and non-working people. So even if you've left the industry, but the industry was still your main working life, then people are eligible to come to us. It can be a family member that's affected, not just you. So if you're financially responsible for somebody and they are facing hardship, then we can look at that. The application process is straightforward. We just need to try and think about establishing those 3 areas of eligibility and getting full details from you. But you know, we're a friendly team, we're a small team. We want to try and help you. I think that's what we'd going to get across. You know, we have funds available and we want to use them to serve people who are going through difficulty. So we will not be putting obstacles in your way unnecessarily. We will want to get you the help that you need if you come to us. And you don't have to be a member of any body. You don't have to be a CII, Chartered Insurance Institute member. It's great if you are, but you don't have to be. You don't have to be a member of anything else either. Just the fact that you have committed to work in the insurance industry, and we, as the insurance industry's charity, want to commit to support you if you need us.
And I think that's just a really good overview of again, we've talked a lot in this podcast about the breadth and the you know the wide scope of your remit as a charity, and I think it's kind of unique, really. I mean, it's fantastic, and I think just to conclude with what we can do as an industry, as employers, colleagues, and from a general community perspective to support your work, taking us back to those examples of people who you've helped, who've said, please share my story, please speak about my story, because it might encourage somebody else to approach. I think my first sort of suggestion for a call to action would be for anybody who's actually listening to this podcast who hears something that they think could help, well, not just help them personally, but may help a colleague, or may be important to discuss with their line manager or HR about anybody that they're in contact with in their organisation, to talk about it, to suggest they listen to this, or to go to your website, or to contact somebody there or at the Insurance Families Network. Do you have anything else that you would suggest as a call to action?
I think that we clearly live in a world where social media plays an important part, and we have a social media presence. We'd love you to share what we do. So whether it's following us, or being part of our social media networks, or whatever, whatever stage people are at with that, it doesn't mean that you're committed to do anything more but share it with your networks, which will probably be very different to our network. So therefore, we already are reaching a greater number of people. We feel we do a reasonable job in spreading the word, but we're conscious that we're spreading the word to a limited number of people. So I think by people engaging with us on social media, it means that we can get through to a lot more people. And some of those people might be people who need our help. So I think it's, first of all, what can you do? If you need help yourself, contact us. If you don't need help, clock our name, because you may need us in the future. And even if you don't know what we're doing, you'll at least know that we're there. But secondly, think about the people who are around you. Many of us are very privileged in a working environment to work alongside some great people who actually become more than just work colleagues. They become friends to a certain extent. And we might be the only person who hears about the difficult times they're going through, something that's happening at home, which they wouldn't necessarily want to share with their employer on a formal basis, in case it kind of makes them look a little bit like vulnerable or unable to do their job, or mind on the matter, or whatever we want to call it. So we may be the only person who hears, actually, you know what, so-and-so's partner is out of work, or so-and-so's partner has left them, or so-and-so's mother is really seriously ill, which means they might need to take some time off work, which could mean a reduction in income. All those things mean that we could be the person who may be able to share the news. Well, if things are difficult, don't forget there is the insurance charities. It's always worth having a conversation with them. So I think things like that we can do. Make sure so your employer knows about us. That's really important. They can make a sort of formal connection with us. So if you're hearing about us for the first time, or you only hear about us through the Insurance Families Network, it may be that there would be something you could do with your HR team, or just to get them to contact us, or to get even to contact us and say, look, I don't ever hear about this through my employer. Could you make contact with this person? This is the name of the HR manager or director or whatever. That sort of information would be really useful to us. We have an annual awareness week where we try to push out more information about what we do. Again, if you didn't hear about us on this year's awareness week in June, there is more we could be doing with your employer, definitely. And I think we don't, as I say, undertake any fundraising, but sometimes putting on something in the office, if you're back in your office, there are employers who say, anybody want to put forward a charity and we'll do something, we'll match fund or whatever. By putting on a cake sale or just a fundraising event, it will mean that more people will hear about us. So thinking about that, just really different ways in which you can get the message out there.
And I guess, Anneli Joy, it's fair to say that there may also be opportunities to volunteer with you if anybody who's listening to this podcast is sort of inspired to support you in a more practical, tangible way. Is it fair to say that those opportunities will be on your website?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we're always looking for people to engage with us and to support in whatever way they feel able to. I think we all can do that by making sure we're telling people about the work of the charity, particularly when we know circumstances are difficult. But if people have got spare time or skills, or that they want to put to good use with us, then there are definitely things on our website, and also they can just contact us, even if it's like saying, look, I'm really good at this, could that be used in your charity? We've very recently had somebody who contacted us to say, I'd love to offer some of the people that you help employment advice and support in looking for work and doing their CVs and whatever. And that's been a really big thing that we've had recently, a couple of people needing that kind of help. So people can volunteer in all sorts of ways, and all that sort of thing adds into this general lifeline support that we can be for people in our industry who are going through difficult times.
That's incredibly helpful. And Anneli, Joy, on behalf of the IFN, just thank you so much for taking the time to just discuss your vital and important work at the Insurance Charities. And I know that we as a network are very keen to continue to provide support in raising your profile, not just this kind of call to action to all of our members as well. And we look forward to collaborating with you in the future. And your details will be posted along with the podcast on our social media feed, probably on LinkedIn. And if there's anything that you'd like to say in closing, please do now.
Well, just thank you so much for this opportunity. It's fantastic to be able to work with you. I think we all know the challenges that families face, individuals face. And so the more that we can work together to identify those who need our help and then to ensure that that help gets to them, that's got to be the way forward for all of us. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And to everyone who's tuned in to listen to this IFN podcast, thank you, and bye for now.